The first person to rape me was my father. Girls are so disregarded since the day they're born. In cultures such as mine, abuse is more common than we know. So I was pregnant from the night of the rape, and having told my mother that my periods had stopped, she called my father. When he came, he was really cross, he was really angry, and he said that I had ruined his life. I had brought shame upon the family, that now he was going to have to sort this problem out. I ended up at a clinic. I remember having gas and air. I just turned 15 when all of this was happening. I remember driving back from the clinic, and my father and mother were both saying the same thing, that she would have been better off dying when she was born. He said that they'd found a solution, and I was led into the guest room, which is the same room in which I was raped. I was fearful. I heard a voice of one of the men that had raped me, and they said that we're going to do the engagement now. And I understand I'm going to marry the son of the person that raped me. So I'm marrying the son in a sham wedding so that when I'm married, I can be servant and a domestic servant for the man that raped me. So this child marriage was arranged, and then came the trade. They exchanged money, they exchanged gold. My father had to give him kitchen equipment like washing machines, which were expensive back then. And I was really scared that once I got to my marital home that I would be gang raped again. And when I had the marriage ceremony, there's normally a party. I got to the party where everybody was dancing, but I was told I had to go home. I was there literally for 10 minutes. I saw the groom. I saw people because I was in a separate room, but I could see people from there. Nobody saw me. And I went home. I was dropped off on my own, and I was in the house all alone. And I remember sitting in my room, which was bare. It had always been bare, looking at my books. I was just wondering what was going to come next. And before I knew it, they were back. They came to take me to the new home. And my mother-in-law told me as soon as I stepped in the door to take off my gold that I was wearing for the ceremony. She told me to take off my Indian sari that I was wearing because it was very expensive. And she gave me a very old Punjabi suit, the tunic and the bottoms to put on. And then she led me to a room, and it was downstairs, and it was very small. It was literally like a cupboard. There was a small makeshift single bed, and opposite was like a cupboard that you could put things in. No mirror, nothing, no door. And she said, this is where you'll be. You will just need the kitchen, and you will look after us the way you looked after your parents. I was there for 4 years. Every day I pulled out my father-in-law's hands out of my underwear, pushed him off me. He raped me. He sexually abused me. There was a control-driven adult that bullied me every day. My mother-in-law, when I at first started to plate my own food, would throw my food with the plate into the dustbin and tell me to eat out of the bin. And at first I started to, but then I kind of gave up and I didn't eat anymore. The mistake they made was they were greedy for money. So they asked me to find a job. And it was the first time I was exposed to the real world, really. I would walk to work and I found this amazing job, and I created a different persona because I needed to earn to please my mother and father-in-law. I started off as a clerical assistant. I managed to get a managerial job by the age of 17, 18. And I made 2 friends who started noticing that things weren't okay with my appearance, because sometimes I would have bruises or bite marks because my father-in-law would bite me a lot whilst raping me. So I started to tell one of the girls, because she was from the same culture as me. She had this Nigerian boyfriend from Africa, and they both seemed very caring and they seemed concerned. But she said to me, go back home. Just don't go to your in-laws, just leave and go home. Just do it. Your mum and dad will love you because you're 21 now, right? People say, but why would you go home if that's where you were raped and treated so badly from birth? But when you have nobody else, when you have no self-worth and you're quite a naive 21-year-old, you go to what you know. You go back to the place that you know. I didn't need them to solve any problems. I just needed just some human interaction of a loving kind. Somebody had seen me get on the bus that was from our community. I stood at the door and knocked on it, and my father opened the door. He grabbed my hair, literally forced me into the house. But it was the words he was using that I had found myself in the gutter now, that I was good for nothing, that I should have died. My mother failed him by birthing a girl. My eldest brother was there, who's 7 years older than me, and they both started to beat me. And I felt this is not like a normal beating. They were trying to kill me, and they kept using the word honor killing, that they had to maintain the respect. I remember looking forward on the floor, and my mother's feet were there, and my sister-in-law, and they were just standing there, and I feverishly looked up, trying to not make eye contact, but I was desperately needing someone to help me. And I thought if they see me looking up, they may help me. But they just were very, very angry. They had their arms crossed. And I do believe at that point I left my body completely because the pain stopped. And I remember looking at myself from the outside in saying, it's not time yet for you to go. And then my brother came, and my other brother, who said, not here. And they just stopped and quickly disappeared. And I lay there for, I say 3 days, but I don't know if I'm being hand on heart honest. My mother's friend, she opened the door and said, they're sending you to India on Sunday. I had no idea what day it was, but she said, Sunday, they're sending you to India, ask for help at security. And she went, she just closed the door and disappeared. I started to talk to myself. It's the only thing I could do. And I asked myself the serious question, do you want to live, or are you ready just to give up? And I don't know why, but I wanted to live. I knew that I wanted to live, and I decided I was going. I didn't know where I was going. I thought the people that had tried to help me before from work, they had told me where they lived. So I thought, well, I can find them. They'll help me, won't they? It was my mind that got me to move, and I would try and pick myself up on my hands and knees, and I couldn't do it. So I was using this part of my arms to bring myself up and shuffle forward. I got to the door. Then I had the problem of reaching the handle, and I remember trying to reach, but this arm was broken, and I had a very short window of opportunity in which I could leave. But somehow I got out, and then I was faced with this 6-foot high wall, which sounds very fictional, but it was true. And I remember thinking, I can't do this. I couldn't even stand up. And it's really weird because my dog came and sat next to me. She looked at me and she looked up to say, go. I don't know how I did it, but I believed I could. And I remember getting over that fence, falling down and collapsing on the other side. And I made it to a taxi rank. And that's where I got some help. One of the drivers turned up, is somebody after you? And I said, yes. He covered me with a blanket. And he could have been anyone, but I believe in angels, and I believe that angels have crossed my path more than once. And I ended up being in hospital for 2 months, but I ended up making my way to where my friends were because I still had this hope that they would help me. And when I got there, I learned that my friend, she had left. But he answered the door. But he said, look, you can stay here, but you have to pay me rent. I've got 2 rooms. And I said, okay, thank you. I said, but I can't work just yet because I'm not really completely well. And he said, well, you could owe me. I thought, he's another person that's saving me, giving me a place to stay. And I thought only good things of him. But I ended up going to a party with my friend who had let me stay in his house. And I was excited because I'd never been to a party. I'd never been invited anywhere. And I thought suddenly someone's asking me to go somewhere. And as I got to this party, he was giving me Coke to drink, which I later discovered wasn't Coke, it was Malibu. And he got me drunk. He'd obviously taken advantage of me and raped me and got me pregnant. And I gave birth to a daughter. And I really believed I'd changed the cycles of abuse because I celebrated her not understanding the situation I was in with my new partner now. And my daughter was my reason for me wanting to start earning more money than I'd ever seen in my life. And I said to my daughter, I'm going to give you everything I never had. I'm going to love you from the depth of my heart. I will protect you. And I started creating businesses from a spare room because we had 3 bedrooms, so I had a spare room. And before I knew it, I'd extended this business into a small shop into the town centre. We had bought a house. I bought a house, and I had put my partner's name on everything. He wasn't working. I was the only bread earner. Every weekend he was out, but again, I didn't think it was odd because that's what I knew from a young age, that's what men do. And we went on then to have a son who was born. He's my first son, and he seemed quite happy when my son was born, and I thought, this is going to change our relationship, things are going to get better. And I started to develop the businesses, and I was doing really, really well and looking after my partner whilst he's doing what he wants to do. I'm giving him money so he can spend it wherever he wants, not questioning things again. But the violence was starting to escalate. The violence was very mental abusive to start with, the restriction of money, not allowed any friends, not allowed to go anywhere. It was those sort of restrictions, but it became more violent with being pushed down the stairs, being punched, being kicked. I didn't know what I was doing wrong, but I never seemed to do anything right either. And in front of the children, I would always smile because I didn't want them to ever remember me crying, I guess. And then one evening, my partner was going out and he wanted more money than I had. I didn't have it. He was angry. My partner pushed me down the stairs and left. And I remember lying at the bottom of the stairs, unable to get up because I was in a lot of pain. I felt like I felt a foot coming out of me. And I got to hospital and I gave birth to my third child, who died not long after he was born, but he was perfect. And I just remember feeling like I wished it was me that was dead, not him. I wanted to organise a funeral for my baby, but my partner said I couldn't, and I begged the hospital to help me, so they organised a service. I think it was probably the hardest thing I had to do, attend my own baby's funeral. And I've been through a lot of trauma, abuse, but when your arms are empty and they long for that child, nothing really fills them. And time went on, the abuse got worse. He would sometimes strangle me to a point where I was sure I was going to die. He would push my head underwater as a punishment when the children were at school. But it was the words that broke me, that I was too fat, I was too ugly, that nobody would want me. He said my children would hate me in the end. This carried on. My daughter went to university. She noticed things were wrong. She started to question him and said, "Don't treat mummy that way." So his solution to that was to cut me off and not let her have any interaction with us. Snapchat had just come about and I would send her a Snapchat, and that was my way of letting her know that I was okay. I had to leave the phone on a table where he could see it, and if he fell asleep, I'd rush and get the phone, run to the bathroom, text her to say I'm fine, delete the message and go put it back. My daughter received a text message and the message said I'm sorry, and it was a photo of me asleep on the sofa, and her brother was slumped on a table in a very strange way, like he'd passed out. She ran out of her lecture theatre and made a call to the home. So she woke me up and she said to me, "Are you okay?" And I said, "My throat feels very dry. Just give me a minute." And I'm still on the phone to her, and I've gone to the kitchen to get a glass of water. And I see that he's turned all the taps on the stove on and the house is full of gas, just waiting to explode. I somehow pick up my 15-year-old son and take him upstairs, not out the house, upstairs, and I hear the door lock. Every night he would lock the bedroom doors at 11 p.m. and reopen the doors at 5 a.m. And I remember just sitting there holding my son and thinking, what do I do? The sensible thing would be to leave. I had no common sense. And when you're in a relationship where somebody is a narcissistic person and it's domestic violence, you have no idea that you can actually just take the step out of the house yourself. You don't have the strength to ask for help. And asking for help is one of the hardest things that you can do. And it was my son that was brave enough to say at school, "I need help. I can't take this anymore." We were removed by social services. The police were involved when the school heard how serious the matter was. We were put into a safe house, and I go to the other room, and it was the first time after a long time. I was with my partner for 23 years. Where I never cried with him. And I let them out that day, and I cried and I cried and I cried, and I looked down, and I remember there was this puddle that I'd created, literally a puddle of tears, and I said, "Nina, what are you going to do? Are you going to dance in these tears? Because if you don't, you're going to drown in them. This is what you have to do." I was told, because on paper you have all of this money, we can't support you as the government, so you're out on the streets. We became homeless. And it was, again, somebody from the school who knew what was going on. And she opened her doors to us and her home and said, "Look, I want you to live with me. I don't expect anything from you." And I focused on earning money. So I cleaned toilets. I worked for people that I used to sell to when I had my own businesses. I started to go and work in their factories, doing some packing jobs for £2 an hour. And by the end of this 30 days, I had enough money to pay for 2 months up front to a landlord that I could find that would rent to me. It was just me and my son there. And instead of things coming together, they weren't. And I didn't ever say to him, "Are you okay?" And my youngest son became very depressed, as did my son that was at boarding school. My son at boarding school was self-harming and I didn't know. And my youngest son ran away. He left a suicide note. He borrowed some money and got to Miami in the hope to buy a gun so he could shoot himself. And I was determined not to lose this child. I've moved away over 400 miles from the area I was born in, and that was probably the best thing that happened in my life for not just myself, but my whole family, my children. I was no longer looking over my shoulder. I wasn't rushing into a shop and rushing out in case somebody saw me, because slowly and slowly I started to discover there was freedom on the other side of fear. I was almost like a child living in an adult's body, and I decided that I got to decide if I was pretty or not, if I was Rapunzel or not. And I knew from a young child I had done nothing but love others. I was not born into love, but I was love itself. And I decided I would weaponize that love, and I would love the fear out of anybody that had fear in them. I would love the fear out of victims. I would love the fear out of survivors who didn't know how to move on with their traumas. And I would do something to change other people's lives, because suddenly I was in love, and it was my first love. And that love, other than my children's, was for me. My first ever public talk was a TED talk, and I did it for my sister because I discovered I had a half sister I never knew about. My father had had an extramarital affair. He had abducted his 6-year-old daughter, his illegitimate daughter, without anybody knowing. He had sold her to human traffickers and left her in a place where they harvest organs. He lost respect from everyone by having an extramarital affair and having a daughter, and the daughter was still alive. And he was imprisoned, but abduction serves a small sentence. So he came out, and when he came out, he was celebrated by the community for doing an honourable thing. So I decided to do this TED talk to ask for change. And I tell my story primarily for her, because she's a representation of all of the girls that are out there whose parents let them down, who get let down by social services and governments and police, all the people that are supposed to protect them. I know there are millions and millions of other Ninas living my old life who, from one point or another, have experienced or are experiencing something that I went through. And I don't want that for anyone, because when you suffer, you really want to help protect everybody else from suffering. And that's where I'm at today. If there's anybody out there that's suffering from gender-based violence, be it abuse of nature or mental abuse or physical abuse, know that it's wrong. We're taught that we are supposed to live and die for our parents, that we have this duty to fulfill for them, and that's not true. It's not selfish to think about your own life and your own safety. First thing you should do is to talk to somebody, speak to a friend. Charities, non-profits like my own, we are here to actually serve you and to give you that hand, because we were once that person. Please ask for help. I started my organisation over a year ago. The organisation is called endhonourkillings.org, and I'm really proud to say that we've helped women and children escape from forced marriages, abuse and domestic violence, and it's getting bigger because we have more volunteers coming on board. Since I've been speaking out, I have numerous threats from my family. I speak about human trafficking very openly, and by speaking about something, people are educated it, and they can actually take steps to help another person. They know the signs, they look out for things. I just want to say thank you for listening to my story. You may have heard 1,000 times, but it's true that you can do whatever you put your mind to. I say you deserve to be living your life, not just putting one foot in front of the other every day just to exist. If you need me, I'm sure you'll see the links down below. I am known as London's life coach, and I will always reach out to you. If you are struggling and you are suffering from any of the traumas that I've mentioned today, please reach out to somebody. Tomorrow doesn't exist. You've only got today, and you deserve it. You deserve to get out of that situation today, and things will get better. I was homeless 6 years ago, and I'm here now living my life happily with gratitude with my 3 amazing children. Thank you.